Hello and welcome to today's video. So this time we're going to be taking the first of several looks through the original Tintin stories. Now I haven't read these for literally decades, but I absolutely loved them when I was a kid, and I'm very much looking forward to going back rereading these and reviewing them as we work our way through all 24 books. Now in this video here we're going to show the first 3 stories. Now we have to bear in mind that these first 3 are a little bit controversial. We have to bear in mind the time that they were written and published, so the very late 1920s and early 1930s, and that was a completely different time. It was over 90 years ago. Attitudes were different, and the way that certain countries' attitudes were perceived was also different. Values and people's opinions on wildlife, completely a different world away from where we are today. So some of the stuff that you find in here is, well, it's not politically correct. One of the books even has a warning before you get into it, and please go in with an open mind. Bear in mind the time that these were written. I certainly don't condone racism or cruelty to animals. I wouldn't dream of it. But I do want to still review these books in chronological order right the way through. And thankfully, this is just a small sort of blip in the early parts of the Tintin story, and they just get better and better as we go along. So anyway, without further ado then, sit back, relax, and let's get to it. The Adventures of Tintin is a series of 24 stories created by Belgian cartoonist Georges Remy, who wrote under the pen name Herge. By 2007, a century after Herge's birth in 1907, Tintin had been published in more than 70 languages with sales of more than 200 million copies, and had been adapted for radio, television, theatre and film. The series first appeared in French on the 10th of January 1929 in Le Petit Vingtième, the Little 20th, a youth supplement to the Belgian newspaper Le Vingtième Siècle, the 20th century. The success of the series led to serialized strips published in Belgium's leading newspaper Le Soir, which is the evening, and spun into a successful Tintin magazine. In 1950, Herge created Studios Herge, which produced the canonical versions of 11 Tintin albums. The series is set during a largely realistic 20th century. Its hero is Tintin, a courageous young Belgian reporter and adventurer, aided by his faithful dog Snowy. Other allies include the brash and cynical Captain Haddock, the intelligent but hearing-impaired Professor Calculus, incompetent detectives Thompson and Thompson, and the opera diva Bianca Castafiore. Tintin first appeared in English in the weekly British children's comic Eagle in 1951 with the story King Ottokar's Sceptre. It was translated in conjunction with Casterman, Tintin's publishers, and starts by describing Tintin as a French boy. Snowy was called by his French name Milou. The process of translating Tintin into British English was then commissioned in 1958 by Muthen, Herge's British publishers. It was a joint operation headed by Leslie Lonsdale Cooper and Michael Turner, working closely with Herge to attain an accurate translation as true as possible to the original work. Now we'll take a detailed look at the life and career of Herge and how the stories were updated and translated into English in a future video, but for today, let's take a look at the first 3 stories. There are a couple of ways to read the Tintin stories brand new today. In an updated box set, which excludes Tintin in the Congo, or as these beautiful large format hardbacks. Now this is my preferred way to read the books today. The earlier box set, which includes Congo, is available second-hand, and I got this one off eBay for about £40. The hardbacks are all available on Amazon individually for about £8 each, and I've put links in the description down below if you'd like to order your own copies. So the first book in the series then is Tintin in the Land of the Soviets. Tintin, a reporter for Le Petit Vingtième, is sent with his dog Snowy on an assignment to the Soviet Union, departing from Brussels. En route to Moscow, an agent of the OGPU, the Soviet secret police, sabotages the train and declares the reporter to be a dirty little bourgeois. The Berlin police indirectly blame Tintin for the bombing, but he escapes to the border of the Soviet Union. Following closely, the OGPU agent finds Tintin and brings him before the local commissionar's office, instructing the commissioner to make the reporter disappear accidentally. Escaping again, Tintin finds how the Soviet fools the poor idiots who still believe in a red paradise by burning bundles of straw and clanging metal in order to trick visiting English Marxists into believing that non-operational Soviet factories are productive. Tintin witnesses a local election where the Bolsheviks threaten the voters to ensure their own victory. When they try to arrest him, he dresses as a ghost to scare them away. Tintin attempts to make his way out of the Soviet Union, but the Bolsheviks pursue and arrest him, then threaten him with torture. Escaping his captors, Tintin reaches Moscow, remarking that the Bolsheviks have turned it into a stinking slum. He and Snowy observe a government official handing out bread to homeless Marxists, but denying it to their opponents. Snowy steals a loaf and gives it to a starving boy. Spying on a secret Bolshevik meeting, Tintin learns that all the Soviet grain is being exported abroad for propaganda purposes, leaving the people starving, and that the government plans to organize an expedition against the kulaks, the rich peasants, and force them at gunpoint to give us their corn. Tintin infiltrates the Red Army and warns some of the kulaks to hide their grain, but the army catches him and sentences him to death by firing squad. By planting blanks in the soldiers' rifles, Tintin fakes his death and is able to make his way into the snowy wilderness, where he discovers an underground Bolshevik hideaway in a haunted house. A Bolshevik then captures him and informs him, "You're in the hideout where Lenin, Trotsky and Stalin have collected together wealth stolen from the people." With Snowy's help, Tintin escapes, commandeers a plane and flies into the night. The plane crashes, but Tintin fashions a new propeller from a tree using a penknife and continues to Berlin. The OGPU agents appear and lock Tintin in a dungeon, but he escapes with the aid of Snowy, who has dressed himself in a tiger costume. The last OGPU agent attempts to kidnap Tintin, but this attempt is foiled, leaving the agent threatening, "We'll blow up all the capitals of Europe with dynamite." Tintin returns to Brussels amidst a huge popular reception. Now, although the artwork is very primitive and the story is filled with historical errors, as the first book in the series, it is a valiant effort. Herge himself really had no accurate knowledge of the USSR beyond what he'd read in a short book on the country, and also it's easy to forget when this book was first published, way back in 1929. Herge himself admitted that he was learning his craft whilst the original strips were being released each week, sometimes not knowing how Tintin might escape the predicament he put him into. There is still some impressive use of perspective in the panels, and the artwork improves as the story progresses. The crowd scenes are also very well composed. Now, this was only available in bootleg form for decades, and the English language edition was finally published in 1989. There is a colour version in existence, only in French, and that was published in 2017. Perhaps this is just one for the completionists, but who would want to read them all in order, but that is definitely me. So book 2 then was Tintin in the Congo. So Tintin and his dog Snowy travel to the Belgian Congo, where a cheering crowd of native Congolese greet them. Tintin hires a native boy, Coco, to assist him in his travels, and soon thereafter Tintin rescues Snowy from a crocodile. A criminal stowaway attempts to kill Tintin, but monkeys throw coconuts at the stowaway that knock him unconscious. A monkey kidnaps Snowy, but Tintin saves him by disguising himself as another monkey. The next morning, Tintin, Snowy and Coco crash their car into a train, which the reporter fixes and tows to the village of a Babaroon tribe. He meets the king, who accompanies him on a hunt the next day. A lion knocks Tintin unconscious, but Snowy rescues him by biting off its tail. Tintin gains the admiration of the natives, making the Babaroon witch doctor Manguan jealous. When he cures a man using quinine, he is hailed as a Bola Mantara, breaker of rocks. With the help of the criminal stowaway, Manganga accuses Tintin of destroying the tribe's sacred idol. The enraged villagers imprison Tintin, but then turn against Manganga when Coco shows them footage Tintin had made of the witch doctor and the stowaway conspiring to destroy the idol. Tintin becomes a hero in the village, and a local woman bows down to him, saying, "White man very great, has good spirits. White mister is a big juju man." Angered, Manganga starts a war between the Baburin and their neighbours, the Manhatfu, whose king leads an attack on the Baburin village. Tintin outwits them, and the Manhatfu cease hostilities and come to idolise Tintin. Muganga and the stowaway plot to kill Tintin and make it look like a leopard attack, but Tintin survives and saves Muganga from a boa constrictor. Muganga pleads mercy and ends his hostilities. The stowaway attempts to capture Tintin again and eventually succeeds disguised as a Catholic missionary. They fight across a waterfall, and the stowaway is eaten by crocodiles. After reading a letter from the stowaway's pocket, Tintin finds that someone called A.C. has ordered his elimination. Tintin captures a criminal who tried to rendezvous with the stowaway and learns that A.C. is the American gangster Al Capone, who is trying to gain control of African diamond production. Tintin and the colonial police arrest the rest of the diamond smuggling gang, and Tintin and Snowy return to Belgium. So in the late 20th century, Tintin in the Congo became increasingly controversial for both its racist colonial attitudes towards Congolese people and for its glorification of big game hunting. Accordingly, attempts were made in Belgium, Sweden, the United Kingdom and the USA to either ban the work or restrict its availability to children. Critical reception of the work has been largely negative, with commentators on The Adventures of Tintin describing it as one of Herge's lesser works. This has resulted in the book being published by Casterman and not Egmont in the UK. It came wrapped in plastic and has a belly band basically warning the reader that the book reflects attitudes of the time of the original publication, which was 1931. The warning is repeated once again in the foreword. Now, I found this much more like a traditional Tintin book. It's in colour, and the layout is now more familiar to the later volumes. The artwork is still a little crude, but it has come on in leaps and bounds from Tintin in the Land of the Soviets. The colouring is lovely, and it's almost like pastel-like. The book is printed on matte paper, though, rather than the glossy paper of the other volumes. I was really taken by the depiction of the animals throughout the story, with the elephant particularly impressive. Like a lot of the wildlife, it does end up being killed, and we do see Tintin casually carrying both tusks over his shoulder. There really are so many politically incorrect aspects to this book, but if you go in with an open mind and try not to look too hard, there is a traditional Tintin adventure within, which leads straight onto Tintin in America. Book number 3, Tintin in America. In 1931, Tintin, a reporter for Le Petit Time, goes with his dog Snowy on an assignment to Chicago, Illinois, to report on the city's organised crime syndicate. He is kidnapped by gangsters and brought before mobster boss Al Capone, whose criminal enterprises in the Congo were previously thwarted by Tintin. With Snowy's help, Tintin subdues his captors, but the police reject his claims and the gangsters escape. After surviving attempts on his life, Tintin meets Capone's rival, Bobby Smiles, who heads the gangster syndicate of Chicago. Tintin is unpersuaded by Smiles' attempts to hire him, and after Tintin orchestrates the arrest of his gang, Smiles escapes and heads west. Tintin pursues Smiles to the midwestern town of Redskin City. Here, Smiles convinces a tribe of Blackfeet Native Americans that Tintin is their enemy, and when Tintin arrives, he is captured and threatened with execution. After escaping, Tintin discovers a source of underground petroleum. The US Army then forces the natives off their land, and all companies build a city on the site within 24 hours. Tintin evades a lynch mob and a wildfire before discovering Smiles' remote hideaway cabin. After a brief altercation, he captures the gangster. Returning to Chicago with his prisoner, Tintin is praised as a hero, but gangsters kidnap Snowy and send Tintin a ransom note. Tracing the kidnappers to a local mansion, Tintin hides in a suit of armour and frees Snowy from the dungeon. The following day, Tintin is invited to a cannery, but it is a trap set by gangsters, who trick him into falling into the meat grinding machine. Tintin is saved when the machine workers go on strike and then apprehend the monsters. In thanks, he is invited to a banquet in his honour, where he is kidnapped and thrown into Lake Michigan to drown. Tintin survives by floating to the surface, but gangsters posing as police capture him. He once again overwhelms them and hands them over to the authorities. Finally, Tintin's success against the gangsters is celebrated by a ticker-tape parade, following which he returns to Europe. This book, like the previous volumes, has been through a few revisions over the years. These are complicated and varied, but each time small changes are made to make the book more politically correct. The real star here, though, is Herge's beautiful artwork. It's just so lovely to look at. This really feels like a proper Tintin adventure that I remember reading when I was a kid. Lots of action, disguises, and the story rocking along at a great pace. Really excellent stuff. So that's it for this first video. Now look out for part 2, covering the next 3 books in this series very soon. So if you have enjoyed today's video, do please give it a thumbs up. Do please consider subscribing for regular vintage content such as this, and I shall look forward to seeing you again very soon. Bye.